Hello, viewers. I'm Mark, 29 years old, male, living in Ohio. I work as a junior detective at the county sheriff's department. Mostly desk duty lately, but I've done enough field work to know that people lie more than they breathe. My dad, my real dad, was a cop too, before he passed away when I was 19. He was a quiet man with a sharp sense for bullshit and a strong sense of right and wrong. He used to tell me, "Son, never trust words until you've checked the evidence." That line has been echoing in my head my entire life. Unfortunately, my mom doesn't live by the same philosophy. When Dad died, she was broken. I do not blame her. They were together since high school, and losing him left a hole no one could fill. For a long time, she just existed, working her job at the library, coming home to a quiet house, and trying to pretend she was fine. 4 years later, she met Richard. Everyone calls him Rick. He is 43, the kind of man who always has a Bluetooth headset in his ear and wears too much cologne for someone who calls himself a sales consultant. From the first day I met him, he rubbed me the wrong way. He laughed too loudly, complimented too much, and seemed to have an answer for everything. He came with 2 kids from a previous marriage. Lily, 8, and Max, 6. I will be honest, they are good kids. Sweet, polite, a little shy around new people, but kind-hearted. It is their dad who is the problem. When Rick first started coming around, Mom lit up again. She laughed more, dressed nicer, and talked about second chances. I wanted to be happy for her. After everything she had been through, she deserved to smile. But I also noticed the little things, the way he avoided paying for anything, the way he subtly guilted her into doing things for him, the way he acted like being polite was a favor he was granting the world. At the time, I was doing fine. I was still living with Mom because she kept saying she did not feel safe in the house alone. And honestly, I did not want to leave her completely by herself. Between my police salary and some side gigs doing private investigation work for local attorneys, I was saving for a down payment on my first house. I paid half the bills, mowed the lawn, fixed the leaky pipes, and made sure Mom never had to stress about maintenance or money. I figured it was the least I could do. Then Rick moved in, and slowly, everything changed. He came with boxes and promises. Promises that he would help out around here, that he would take care of the family. Within 2 months, he had done neither. He treated the house like a hotel and my mom like housekeeping. He never offered to pay rent. He did not touch the bills. He always had some excuse. "I'll cover next month," or "My commission check hasn't cleared yet." I tried to stay civil, but it was hard to watch. He would sit on the couch watching TV while Mom cooked and cleaned after him like a maid. Then came his new job, a warehouse gig. He strutted around like he had invented employment itself. He started wearing those neon safety vests even when he was off the clock, like it was some badge of honor. One morning, while I was drinking coffee before work, he said with a grin that did not reach his eyes, "Now that I'm working, we'll need someone to watch the kids after school." He looked right at me when he said it. I put the mug down and said, "That's not my responsibility." He laughed like I had cracked a joke. My mom looked uncomfortable, her voice soft when she said, "Mark, it's just a few hours until he's back. They're family." That word again. Family? It gets used like a weapon in that house. The few hours turned into evenings, then into full nights. Rick would drop Lily and Max off around 3:30 p.m. and vanish until 9 or 10 p.m., claiming he was working overtime. I later found out his overtime was just him drinking at a bar near the warehouse. The first few times I tried to make it work. The kids were innocent in all this. I would make them dinner, help Lily with her math homework, and let Max watch cartoons. But I work shifts that can run late, and it started clashing with my schedule. One evening, I told Mom, "I can't keep watching them. I have work too." She sighed and said, "You're so good with them though, honey." Which I knew meant I don't want to argue with Rick. Over time, it became routine. I would come home to find the kids sitting at the kitchen table doing homework or waiting for me to make them dinner while Rick was God knows where. The man had figured out the perfect setup. He had a built-in babysitter who would never charge him and never say no because mom would guilt me into helping. Then last week, everything finally snapped. I had been working a 12-hour shift running on coffee and adrenaline. I pulled into the driveway around 9:30 p.m., just wanting a shower and sleep. But before I even got to the door, I saw two small shapes on the porch swing. Lily and Max. They were curled up under their jackets, asleep, with backpacks next to them. There was a note taped to the door in Rick's sloppy handwriting. "Running late. You're a lifesaver, bro." Bro. I stood there for a full minute, trying to process what I was looking at. These kids were 6 and 8 years old, left outside in the dark like stray cats. I checked my phone. 5 missed calls from mom, all saying, "Can you please just take them in for tonight?" Rick's phone went straight to voicemail. Mom was out at a friend's birthday dinner 2 towns over. I took the kids inside, made them mac and cheese, and let them watch a movie until they fell asleep on the couch. But inside, I was done. You do not abandon your children on a porch. You do not use my house like a daycare. And you do not treat me like an unpaid employee. The next morning at work, I was talking to my buddy from the department about something completely unrelated when he mentioned they had pulled security footage of a guy dumping trash illegally behind a strip mall. The vehicle on camera was a black F1 Mifid. The name on the registration? Rick. That was when I heard my dad's voice in my head again. Never trust words until you have checked the evidence. I started digging. Not through police channels at first, because that would have been crossing a line. I just did what any good investigator would do. I searched his name online, looked through social media, and asked around quietly. His LinkedIn said he worked at a distribution center 2 towns over. His Facebook was mostly pictures of beer, barbecue, and those inspirational memes about hardworking dads. But then, something odd, I found another Facebook account. Same face, different name. Private, but the profile picture was unmistakably him. I asked a friend at the DMV to check what address was listed on his vehicle registration. It wasn't my mom's house. It was a townhouse in another county under a woman's name, Rebecca Lowe. A quick search later, and there she was on social media. Her account was public enough to show a few posts. One of them stopped me cold. A picture of Rick with his arm around her and 2 kids about the same age as Lily and Max, all smiling at a county fair. The caption said, "Blended family." I dug deeper. Public court records. 2 DUIs in his name. 1 case sealed due to child endangerment. Suddenly the picture made sense. He had been living a double life. My mom was just his backup plan. I sat on the information for 2 days. I wanted to make sure I had everything right. Then I decided to end it properly. I told Mom that I wanted a family night, just the 4 of us. I made spaghetti, garlic bread, the works. Mom was happy, saying it was nice to have us all together. Rick showed up late, reeking of cheap whiskey and body spray strong enough to knock out a bear. He sat down, complimented the food he didn't help make, and started talking about his promotion. I waited until he was halfway through his second plate before I said, as casually as I could, "So, Rick, how's Rebecca?" He froze, fork halfway to his mouth. My mom looked confused. I continued, sliding a folder across the table. Inside was a printout of the property record for the townhouse and a screenshot of that photo. Him, Rebecca, and her kids at the fair. I said, "You might want to tell Mom why your coworker is listed on your address." The color drained from his face. He stammered something about how it wasn't what it looked like, that she was just a friend, that I was snooping into his life. I said, "It's exactly what it looks like." Then I leaned back and added, "And about those overtime shifts? The bar cameras across from your warehouse say hi." He stood up, muttering curses, and stormed out. Mom sat there in silence for almost a full minute before the tears came. She kept whispering, "I can't believe this." I didn't know what to say. I had seen this coming for months. That weekend, I packed my things and moved into a short-term rental near work. I told Mom I would still check in on her, but I couldn't live there anymore. She understood. That was 2 weeks ago. I thought it was over. After I moved out, things were quiet for a while. I checked on Mom every few days just to make sure she was holding up. She sounded tired but calm, saying she was focusing on herself and that Rick hadn't tried to reach out. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to think she had finally seen through him and was starting to rebuild her life. For a few weeks, that seemed true. Then, one Sunday afternoon, my phone buzzed and her name flashed across the screen. She started with the small talk, asking how work was going, if I was eating enough, if my apartment was comfortable. I could tell from the tone that something was coming. And sure enough, it did. She said that Rick had come by to talk things out. He was crying, apparently, saying he had made mistakes and that he just needed space to figure things out. According to her, he had been staying with a friend, trying to get clean, whatever that meant. She said he missed her and the kids and wanted to make it right. I could hear the old habit in her voice, the one where she tried to smooth over the edges of a disaster and pretend it was fixable. She said she forgave him because the kids need stability. I felt something in my chest twist when she said that word again. Stability. I told her flatly that stability doesn't come from a liar who abandons children on a porch. She tried to argue that everyone deserves a second chance, that maybe things would be different this time. Then she asked the question I knew was coming. Could I still help with Lily and Max, just until things settle? I didn't raise my voice. I just said no. I told her, I'm not doing this again. There was a pause on the other end of the line, then a quiet click as she hung up. 2 days later, I got a call that made my blood run cold. It was from CPS. The woman on the phone sounded calm but serious. She said that the children had been left alone overnight. Neighbors had reported noises, and when authorities checked, they found Lily and Max alone in the house. Apparently, my number was listed as their emergency contact. I didn't waste time. I grabbed my keys and drove straight there. When I pulled up, I could see through the window that the lights were still on. The front door was unlocked. The house smelled like stale beer and old takeout. Dirty dishes were piled in the sink, empty bottles scattered on the counter. The living room looked like a storm had hit it. Clothes, toys, and papers everywhere. Lily and Max were sitting on the couch watching TV with that blank look kids get when they've been trying to pretend everything is fine. They looked up when I came in. Max ran to me first, clutching his stuffed dinosaur, and Lily followed, eyes wide and red-rimmed from crying. I asked where Mom and Rick were. Lily said they went to talk and never came back. The clock on the wall said it was almost midnight. That was the moment something inside me hardened. I had spent months watching this man manipulate my mother and use those kids as bargaining chips. I had tried being civil, tried walking away, tried letting things play out. But this, leaving children alone in a house full of empty bottles and lies, was the line. I decided I wasn't just going to expose him this time. I was going to bury him. Now, being in law enforcement doesn't give me the right to misuse the system. I'm not above the law, but it does mean I know exactly how it works, what evidence sticks, what paperwork matters, what patterns trigger investigations. So I started documenting. Carefully. I pulled up the reports I'd seen on the illegal dumping incident with his truck and filed it formally under his name, attaching the license plate data and timestamp. Then I went digging through public databases and found the outstanding records from his first marriage, unpaid child support totaling nearly $8,000. I printed copies of every verifiable document and filed them properly through the county channels. No exaggerations, no shortcuts, just the facts. Next, I sent an anonymous tip to Rebecca, the woman from the townhouse. I used a throwaway email, attached the screenshots, and wrote one sentence. You deserve to know he has another family. Within 48 hours, her Facebook page changed from in a relationship to single. Mutual contacts confirmed she'd kicked him out after finding out everything. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Meanwhile, Rick started spiraling. He called my mom non-stop, leaving voicemails that swung from begging to screaming. He told her he was living out of his car, that he'd lost his job because someone sabotaged him, that everyone was against him. I know manipulation when I hear it, and Mom, despite everything, started to fold again. She told me she was worried about him, that he sounded desperate, that maybe she should meet him just to talk. I told her that was her decision, but I wouldn't be there to pick up the pieces this time. Then CPS followed up. They had opened an investigation into the household after the neighbor's report. The caseworker asked me to come in for an interview since I was listed as emergency contact. I told them everything I knew, under oath. I didn't embellish, I didn't speculate. I told them about the nights the kids were left with me, about finding them asleep on the porch, about the drinking, the bar, overtime, the way he manipulated my mother. They asked for documentation, and I gave them what I had: texts, notes, dates. A week later, the caseworker called again. They had temporarily removed the kids from the house while they conducted the investigation. She said they were looking for a relative placement before resorting to foster care. She asked if I would be willing to take them in for a while. I didn't even hesitate. Those kids didn't deserve to be collateral damage in this mess. They were innocent in all of it, caught between adults who should have protected them but didn't. So I said yes. Not because of him, but because those kids deserved better than being pawns in a grown man's ego war. Last week felt like closing the final chapter of a book I never wanted to read in the first place. For months, Rick had been quiet. Too quiet. After CPS took the kids in for evaluation and I became their temporary guardian, he vanished from the picture entirely. No phone calls, no surprise visits, no half-hearted apologies. It was like he had evaporated from the county altogether. I knew better than to assume he was gone for good. Men like him always circle back when they need something: money, validation, or a place to crash. The first sign of his reappearance wasn't a knock on the door, though. It was a rumor. A friend from the warehouse called to tell me Rick had tried to get his job back. Apparently, after Rebecca kicked him out, he had been drifting from one couch to another, blaming everyone but himself. He showed up at the warehouse demanding his position back, but the management had already flagged his file. Turns out one of the environmental fines I'd reported, connected to that illegal dumping, had hit the company too. They weren't about to rehire the guy responsible for the mess. From what I heard, the meeting didn't end well. He yelled, they called security, and he left with the same bitterness that fueled every bad decision he'd ever made. I didn't think much of it until a few days later when I walked out of the sheriff's station after a long shift and saw him waiting near my car. His truck was gone, probably repossessed, and he looked rough. Unshaven, wearing the same jacket from last winter, eyes bloodshot and wild. I could feel the tension in the air before he even opened his mouth. He shouted across the lot that I'd ruined his life, that everything had been fine until I started playing detective in his business, that he'd lost his job, his girlfriend, his house, and his kids because of me. I just stood there letting him get it out, because I've learned that people like him need to unload their guilt on someone else to survive. When he finally stopped yelling, I told him, "No, Rick, you did that yourself. I just filed the paperwork." He stared at me, jaw tight, fists clenched like he wanted to swing, but he didn't. I added, "Next time you dump your kids somewhere, make sure it's not the porch of a cop." There was a long pause before he looked down, muttered something under his breath, and walked away. No grand speech, no redemption arc, no dramatic confrontation. Just a man realizing too late that no one else was to blame for his downfall but himself. That was the last time I saw him. Since then, things have been steady. Not perfect, but stable in a way they hadn't been for years. Mom started therapy after CPS closed their case. She told me one afternoon that her therapist called what she went through coercive control. Hearing that phrase seemed to wake her up a bit. She started to understand how Rick had chipped away at her independence, how every apology was just another hook to reel her back in. She's working through it, slowly but with more strength than I've seen in her since Dad died. She even started volunteering at the library again, rediscovering pieces of herself that had been buried under years of emotional exhaustion. As for Lily and Max, they're adjusting better than I expected. The first few weeks were hard. Max had nightmares, waking up crying for his mom. Lily became quiet, almost withdrawn, like she was afraid that if she said the wrong thing, she'd be punished. But kids are resilient. With consistency, warmth, and a few steady routines, morning pancakes, homework at the same time every evening, weekend trips to the park, they began to breathe again. They call me Uncle Mark now. The first time Lily said it, she looked nervous, like she thought I'd correct her. I didn't. I just smiled and said, "That works." Now the house feels like a home again. There's laughter instead of shouting, cartoons instead of slammed doors, the smell of mac and cheese instead of cheap whiskey. I still keep my detective work separate from home life, but I'd be lying if I said it doesn't help. Every day I see the damage people like Rick do to the ones who trust them most. It makes me determined not to let history repeat itself here. I'm still planning to buy my own place eventually, but for now, I'm focused on giving those kids a safe space to land. I've got time to figure out my future. They need stability now more than I need square footage. Sometimes revenge isn't about shouting or violence or getting even. It's about patience. It's about using the system the right way, letting the truth speak louder than any excuse. It's about watching karma do its work while you quietly move on. The paperwork, the reports, the evidence, they were never about vengeance. They were about accountability. Every now and then, when I'm driving home after a long day or watching Lily and Max chase each other around the backyard, I think about how all of this started, with two sleeping kids on a cold porch, waiting for someone to care enough to bring them inside. I can still see that night clearly, the note on the door, the chill in the air, the weight of responsibility landing on my shoulders. Back then, I thought it was just another case of bad parenting. Turns out it was the start of something that would reshape all of our lives. And whenever I start to doubt if I did the right thing, I hear my dad's voice again, calm and steady as always, saying, "Check the evidence, son." Turns out he was right about everything. Thank you for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, leave a comment, and subscribe for more.